Hi there, I'm Peter Millard and this is 10 Minute Workshop, where 10 minutes in the workshop is never enough. In the workshop this week we're making a sort of it's like an alcove cabinet but without the alcove, but then it's not freestanding either. Yeah, it's a low cabinet with shelves above. It's coming up next. So this is a little bit like an alcove cabinet. It's a low cabinet with a shelf unit above it, space for a TV. It's going into a room where the wall has a sort of dog's leg in it, so it recesses back, but then it stays at that shape all the way along. So one side it's like a fitted cabinet, and the other side it's like freestanding. So it means you've got to make it like a fitted cabinet, basically. So no visible fixings and all that sort of thing. It's quite shallow. It's only 220mm deep, front to back, including doors. So the carcass is only 208 inches, roughly. So yeah, it's all a bit, it's totally little. It's not quite a one-day build, a little bit more than that, but not a great deal more. It's going to have a back fitted to it for strength. It's 1,000mm, a metre wide, and it's floor to ceiling, so almost exactly 8 feet, 2.4 metres high, and it's going to fit very snugly. But yeah, simple enough little job. I've done. On this job I've done a lot of the board cutting myself because I've got some sizable sort of half and third of a sheet offcuts from previous jobs, so I'm just going to use that up on this. And similarly with the shelves, they're 22mm thick, and I'm going to use up the bits and pieces that I've got for that, so I'm going to crack on with that, and then we can start gluing this all together. With the shelves cut to size, I'm lipping these with a softwood edging for strength and fixing them on with dominoes and glue. And with the glue set, I can trim it flush with my router jig, finishing off with a sander before trimming the lipping to length. At the router bench, I can rebate the carcasses for the backs before cutting the domino mortises. I'm also marking the hinge positions in the cabinet sides, then drilling the shelf pin holes. There aren't many, so I'm just using my little jig and a self-centering drill bit. For the fixed shelves, I'm referencing the dominoes off the base of each shelf, and then moving on to the cabinet doors, first making sure they're a pair, then marking the hinge positions, drilling them out on the drill press, then drilling for the fixing screws. Okay, so this is where we start cutting the mortises for the shelves. It's a little bit complicated. Dominoes, obviously. This is the base of the cabinet is separate from the shelf. The shelf actually has a base to it unusually, because that's going to overhang the doors very slightly. I know we've got our sort of elaborate story stick here, which has been the subject of much discussion between me and the client. Every shelf down to the millimetre. So we're just going to double check that. We know the first shelf, this is the left and right sides of the shelf carcass. This is the base of the shelf carcass, which sits on top of the cabinet. We're going to have a hole cut there for cable access. So we need 610mm for TV space, so in there. So now we can take a square, square that across, slightly sharper pencil. We can also square that back this way. Starting with the bottom shelf and using a shelf upright divider as a spacer, I'm working my way up the carcass, cutting dominoes in each side and referencing off the same shelf each time for consistency. The bottom of the shelf and the top of the cabinet need a cable access hole cut with a hole saw. And then I can move on to priming and painting all the exposed woodwork in the usual way. With the paint dry, it's quick work to assemble the cabinet with dominoes and glue. So the glue up's all a bit of a challenge. I haven't got enough clamps this long. And of course there's no mechanical fixings in this, so we can only rely on the strength of the glue and the dominoes. So it's got to be a decent fixing. So what I'm going to have to do is glue up 2 shelves, and clamp them, shoehorn in the next shelf and move the clamps down, and move down the carcass, down the bookcase like that. What else do you do?
I've dry fitted the base of the shelves and clamped it in place for support, and I'm fitting the top 2 shelves, then the side, before clamping them up tight and moving on to the next shelf, repeating the process all the way down the carcass until the last 2 shelves are glued up and clamped.
Okay, well, nothing I can do with that until the glue dries, so grab a quick cup of coffee, leave that alone for 10 minutes and we'll see where we get to.
After unclamping and moving the shelves out of the way, I can trim the cabinet shelf. Then fit the hinge plates in the cabinet and the hinges to the doors, before clamping the cabinet carcass to the bench to fit and fettle the doors, and as always I'm aiming for a 1.5mm gap. Result. With the cabinet moved, I can start to fit the upright dividers to the shelf unit. I'm using guides made from scrap to be sure they stay consistent, and fixing them in place with tongue-tight screws, as these leave a tiny hole that's easily filled and painted over.
Perfectly stable. So this is the site. As I say, it's not really an alcove as such. It's a recess and then an open-ended sort of area, so sort of half-fitted and half alcove unit. But the first thing we do is get the plinth in and levelled up and get these skirting boards, baseboards sorted.
I'm levelling the plinth and fixing it down with little plywood feet and angle brackets, before trimming back and fitting the new skirting board that runs around the plinth. I'm using my usual trick of translucent Correx to mark the socket positions, then transferring these to the back of the cabinet before making the cutouts and fixing on the back. And with the corner plates fixed and drilled through, I can mark the wall position, then fix the cabinet in place with screws and plugs. I'm just offering up the shelves, always good to know that they fit, before popping them back down again to fit the back. As with the cabinet, I fitted corner brackets and I can drill through these to mark the wall, drill and plug, and then screw the shelves to the wall firmly. I'm fitting the doors to make sure the shelf overhang covers okay, then clamping the shelves and cabinet tightly before screwing them together from underneath. Then it's up to the top of the shelves to fit some trim to cover the slight gap to the ceiling. A squeeze of caulk around the exposed edges, then it's doors on and the adjustable shelf in. Ah yes, thank you. I know you noticed that earlier and I finally got around to noticing it too, thankfully just in time to put it right.
So yeah, that's me pretty much done here really. The clients have opted to paint this themselves, so I'm not involved in that. I've got to run a little bit more caulk around the top edge there because I forgot to do that. But otherwise, we're sorted. It's not the most exciting little cabinet and bookcase in the world, but it went in without a fight, and it does make a big difference to the seating space here because what they had before was sort of creeping in too much to the seating area. It's nice to keep it in line with this wall here, so it just fills that recess up neatly, and of course gives you plenty of shelf space for books and whatever else. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, give it a thumbs up, share it out amongst your friends, and do consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. I want to take a second just to say thanks so much to my Patreon supporters. You can support me directly at patreon.com/10-minute-workshop, and I really appreciate everybody who does just that. It does make a difference to me keeping the lights on and helping me continue to make these videos. So thanks so much to everybody who does that, and always room for more, of course. But that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.